Now, we'd like to take a second to do a quick deep dive into a company that's raising on Republic to kind of help you understand what it's like to evaluate a deal. So we're going to start with E03 here, and E03 is a digitally native skincare brand whose foundation is based in traditional and sacred Indian beauty rituals. So I'll click here, and what happens when I click is that I'm taken to E03's deal page. This is the page that you'll come across when you're really kind of looking at a specific company or a specific investment opportunity and kind of starting to do your own due diligence and your own research on what the opportunity has to offer. So as we can see here, most of these companies or the campaign pages are structured very similarly. They all start with a deal overview that's at the top here. So you can see, the one-liner of the company, the different tags that are associated, and normally most companies will provide a pitch video that you can use to really learn about the story of the company or anything that the founders think is relevant for you to know. On the right side here, we see some metrics that are kind of relevant to the current status of the offering. So we see here that E03 has raised almost $430,000 from a little bit north of 1,000 investors. And we can see here that this opportunity closed on December 24th, 2019. Now, if this deal were live, you'd see the end date as it kind of relates, and you'd also see the amount of capital kind of that the company has raised in relation to kind of their fundraising goals here. But basically, all companies will start with this deal overview. And then as you scroll down, you'll start to see other sections emerge that can help you in your research process. So the first thing that we see here is a summary. And this is a section that highlights the most critical information that founders feel is important for angel investors like yourselves to know about the deal. We can see that E03 has highlighted things like $1.25 million raised from notable investors, 30% repeat customer rate, 84% gross margin on its product sales, $1 million in revenue in 2019, and also an association with the Wharton Social Impact Initiative. So some high-level things that would probably be important takeaways to walk away from the deal. As we continue to scroll, we start to see other sections emerge. The first one here is pretty important. This is the problem section. And effectively, this section attempts to illustrate the gap in the market that the company is looking to fill. Ideally, this problem is something that customers and people can relate to, and that you guys as investors should relate to. So as we can see, E03 believes that skincare routines can be confusing and complicated. So we can kind of maybe infer that they're setting up that they're providing a solution to this problem. And if we scroll down, we see that they are. The solution section is really the overview of the problem that the company is solving and how they're solving it. Ideally, as you read through this section, it should do a couple of things. It should be clear, it should be concise, and it should just generally make sense to you. It should also answer the question of why now, because as we know, timing is very important. It's not just about what you bring to the market, but also when you bring it to the market. Lastly, ideally, you want a company solution to be scalable. And what scalable means is that a company or a business is able to increase its production capacity or its capabilities to produce an output as more resources are put into the company. So those resources can take different forms. It could be human capital in the form of hiring new employees, or it could be investment capital in the form of what investors like you might be injecting. But the company takes this capital and it's able to increase its outputs exponentially. And that's positive for you guys as investors because there's a positive effect on your returns, in theory. Scrolling a little bit further, we start to get a deeper dive and insight into the products that E03 sells here. Some awesome and beautifully aesthetic pictures. And then we arrive on the product section. This section is simple enough. It's what the company is selling, whether it's a product or a service. So I'll keep scrolling. And now I see another important section, which is traction. Some investors might argue that this is one of the most important sections that you'll need to look at when you're evaluating a company, depending on who you are. But traction is effectively the growth of a business, whether it's revenues, sales, or some other metrics, over some period of time. And what the reason why this is helpful is because strong traction can be a positive indicator of either strong demand or the company's ability to actually get people to pay for a product or service. So as we can see here, that Avrani has had some pretty solid traction. They did $1 million in revenue in 2019 alone, and hopefully that positions them well to have a successful 2019. Next section here is the customer section. It's another one that's pretty straightforward. These are just the customers who purchase a product or service. I think the main takeaway here is really, it might be helpful to just understand who the company views as its target audience, and who are the people that the company sees as the people who are dealing with that problem that we outlined a bit earlier. Avrani's provided some awesome customer reviews to give you a sense of how their customers like the product. And then the next section here is the business model section. So here is where companies share a little bit of insight into how they actually make money. So as if we read along, we see Avrani is digitally native and 100% of their current sales come from their website, which means they're online and direct to consumer. You can't go out to Target or any kind of retail outlets to purchase them, but you can purchase from the company directly. So this is helpful because, if you understand how the business is making money, that might influence your decision to invest. It also might influence like your view on how the company may continue to grow in the future. And as we think about growth, we can kind of take a step back and look at things on more of like a larger macro level as we look at the market section. This is also another good section because the market is really the space in which the company operates. So in this case, Avrani's operating in the skincare market. And the reason why this matters is because the size of the company's market tends to have an influence on the size of the potential exit of an investor. So if a company is operating in a large market, investors can infer that if the company is able to be successful and capture a large portion of that market, then the exit opportunity could be large as well. And vice versa, if the market is small, then in theory, the exit opportunities in that market are also small. So ultimately, you ideally want companies to be operating in a larger market. If your goal is larger returns, your goal might be something different than that, in which case you would adjust your view there. But ultimately, most investors, especially like institutional investors, are looking for companies that can transform and disrupt their industry and have a potential to capture a large chunk of a market in which consumers are interacting with the company. Speaking of interactions, the next section here is competition, right? And this one is fairly straightforward, but it's also very important. Competition is who the company is competing with within a specific space. So who are the other players that operate in that within that market? And this is important to know because founders, and it's important to, I think, for investors to understand that the founders and the executive team have a good understanding of who the other players are in their space, and they can clearly articulate what differentiates their company from the rest of the pack. This kind of highlights the uniqueness of the company, what makes it special, and ideally kind of how they're going to be able to be successful as opposed to other people who are trying to solve the same problem. So here, important to kind of get a sense of the areas of differentiation. Maybe sometimes it's helpful to look at the amounts of capital that other companies have raised in the space if you want to get a sense of kind of what exit opportunities might look like for companies who operate in skincare, and then also potential exits too. So have any of these companies been acquired? Have they merged with other companies? Have they gone public? This is all information you might want to gather from the competition section. And this section here is kind of bringing things full circle. So, as we've kind of gone through this entire page, we've seen where the company has started, where it is now, and in this vision section, we'll see kind of the view or the vision for the future. So Avrani is really focused on scaling that company. We talked about scalability earlier, and growth. We can see that they're launching a new ritual discovery set or they launched a new ritual discovery set in the fourth quarter of 2019, and they're really focused on product line expansion and also moving into new verticals like hair care, body care, and general personal care. And this might be important for you too, because you want to understand, if I invest now where you guys are, what's the path forward in the future, and how are you going to continue to grow the business? Here is just a quick blurb on notable investors that the company thought would be helpful for you guys as investors to know. So you'd know that you'd be co-investors with really notable names like General Catalyst Rough Draft Ventures, the Dorm Room Fund, Amplify Her, MBA Fund, and also the Wharton Impact Venture Association. So maybe something that might be a positive signal. Depending on how you read that, you could look into those names and see what their expertise in investing has been. And wrapping things out here on this section is one that is last but not least. It's very important, right? This is kind of the team section. And this also may or may not be the most important section, depending on who you're asking and what their thoughts are. As investors, we probably want to know, if we're going to be investing into a ship, right? Who is steering that ship, ship being the company here, and what makes them uniquely qualified to execute on this vision and this mission. While returns are never guaranteed when you're in the private investing space, you can kind of infer that if you have the right people who are sitting in the right seats on that ship, it increases the likelihood and the probability that that ship will ultimately hit its stride and find its way going in the right direction towards success. So something to kind of definitely take a look at here. So that's kind of some of the important sections to review on the page. I'm just going to take a second to go back up to the top here, as there's some terms here on the right that we did not go over. And these are pretty important to know because these are related to the actual investment opportunity itself. So as we can see here, these are the deal terms of the deal. So when you're actually investing, these are the metrics that are around that. So we can see here that this company is raising on using a crowd safe to raise. We're not actually going to dive into what this means or any of these different terms here, but they're helpful tooltips if you guys would like to follow along, or if you'd like to do some research later. We can see Avrani's raising on a crowd safe here. The minimum investment is $100. And these metrics here, the valuation cap and the discount, are metrics that are important relative to the actual crowd safe. So these kind of set the value of your potential investment in the future. Lastly, we see the funding goals, how much they're looking to raise, and the deadline of the offering. The document section is another helpful section for you guys as investors as you're doing your own due diligence, putting on that spyglass or that spy hat and learning more about the company. As we kind of mentioned, when companies want to raise capital on Republic or through portals like this, they file a document called the Form C with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and that document lives on the SEC's website. You can click on some of these to learn a little bit more about the company's background in your research. And finally here, we have the perks section, which is basically just a cool place where founders and companies are able to provide cool incentives to investors who meet certain minimum investment targets or thresholds on the campaign. So you can see here, if you invested $1,000, not only would you receive $1,000 crowd safe, you'd receive all of the things here I mentioned on their website and 20% off products for a month, as well as 20% off products for 6 months. So could be a cool way to get a little bit back on your investment. So that is the deal page. And now I'm going to pass things off to my colleague, Ben, who's going to share a little bit more about how you guys can do an even further deep dive into companies on the platform.
Ben, I think you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Tunde. So yeah, thanks for that. The screen share should be working now. Yeah, so Tunde kind of did a really great walkthrough of the actual deal page and all of the information that's kind of provided by the companies there, and all of the information that's related to their offering. Now it's, how do you get more information? And there's really two ways to do that. One is the discussion section, and the other one is going to be the update section. And I'll do a dive into both of these right now. So we're diving into Avrani's discussion section. It's pretty easy to get to. You can either click discussion here or scroll down and click discussion here. And one of the unique aspects to actually investing via Republic is that you get direct access often to interact with the founders or the founding teams of these startups who are raising on the platform. So as an investor, or not even as an investor, as someone who's just a user of Republic, you can go in here and actually ask questions directly to the people who are running the company. These questions can talk about or can focus around projections. Maybe you want to dive a little bit deeper into the founder's story. Why are they addressing this particular opportunity? Or maybe you just want to, have a better understanding of something. Maybe you don't get the product exactly. This is really your chance to kind of go in there and actually ask a question and receive an answer from the people who are running these companies on a day-to-day basis. So our founders, the founders on Republic, very frequently respond here. They're usually prompt. They enjoy interacting with investors and potential investors, and this is another avenue that you have at your disposal to get more information during your due diligence process. And it's one of the features that's pretty unique to this type of a platform. The other option to get more information is the update section here. So as I click this, you'll now notice there's a bit of a timeline here. Essentially, over the course of a campaign, the startups will actually be able to post updates about their business. Now, these could be related to exciting milestones that are happening with the Republic campaign, with their investment campaign. It could be new product releases, it could be revenue updates, media features. A lot of really important stuff very often takes place and is shown by the founders and promoted in this update section. The best way to kind of get notified and subscribe to these new updates is by going up to the page after you've made an account, and by just pressing this button, you now become a follower of that company, and it could be any company. And once that happens, you'll now get you'll get notifications every single time an update is posted. And you can, of course, update your notification settings to get these daily, weekly, monthly, however you'd like. But it's another piece where you can go in there and really get a lot of great information and kind of newer information, since this is stuff that's actually happening while a campaign is actually live and happening.